Welcome to Real Estate 360 Live with Ryan Sloper, the trusted name in real estate radio. Now, here's Ryan Sloper.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper. For those of you not familiar with the podcast, my guest and I will cover all angles of real estate, from interest rates to the economy, to what's happening in Washington, the Federal Reserve. Anything that affects you and your real estate decisions will be covered here. As we do each and every week, we will dive deeper into the broader economic events that are taking place across, and political as well. Anything, like I said, that's going to have some sort of effect on stock prices, gold and silver prices, real estate. All these things will play a larger role in the economy, and it's important that, most, analysts and media, they only want to cover just, real estate. There's, house prices are going up this month, they're going down, not as many new home sales this month as last month. We're going to go much, much deeper into what's behind all this, because I think it is important for people to have a better understanding of what's taking place in the economy and how that affects real estate, not just, just throwing numbers out there like, oh, it looks like real estate's turning the corner, which we hear pretty much each and every week. Oh, there's too much snow. Looks like the numbers are going to be down again. So, that's not what you're going to get with the show. And, I hope that you guys can appreciate that we don't want to just give you the basic facts of what's out there. So we've got a lot that's going on in the last week and a half, and we want to dive into basically it looks like we just pretty much averted another government shutdown. The House passed a bill. I believe the Senate got a 2-day extension to finalize this bill, which is basically going to allow the government to be open through next September, and I believe it was like some sort of caveat in there that it would only keep Department of Homeland Security funded through February. At any rate, not a surprise. I think this is more of a scare once again for everybody to see that there's a potential shutdown, and then they don't let it happen. It's not. I don't think that the Republicans wanted to have anything that could potentially get pinned on them in the next presidential election, so they had to be very careful. They can claim that they wanted to fight this immigration thing tooth and nail, but at the end of the day, they're not showing that they have a backbone and that they really do stand for something. And we discussed this on a previous episode if you want to check that out. Joining me on our panel, as he does each and every week, is Luis Camarosano. He's a former school teacher, a former attorney, and a former general manager of a major real estate portal. He's often cited in the media as a real estate industry expert in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fox Business, U.S. News, MSN, CNN, and numerous others. Luis, how you doing today?
Ryan, I'm doing grand. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. So
Excellent.
we've got a lot of stuff going on, right? A lot of moving parts all over the place. So I just had brought up about the averting basically another government shutdown, which you and I kind of discussed. This is, almost par for the course, right, of how these things take place. I mean, it's like the media just blows it up, and then last second there's a bill that's passed, and now the Senate is going to go to take a vote on that. I can't see any way that they don't push this thing through. Would you agree with that?
100%. But it's hardly even worth a comment, because we've seen it before. It's nonsense. Nothing gets done. It's the same bloated budget. Yeah, I mean, we know that we're so far in debt at this point that it really is comical. I mean, another $1.1 trillion to get us through next September. Yeah, why not? Give some to the immigrants too. I mean, what difference does it make? I mean, that's basically they put no stop gaps in the budget, and they only talk about it. And they just now what they do is they have these little theater threats over when the budget becomes due, whether to raise the debt ceiling, whether to have a budget or not. But they always put it through, and it's always bigger than the last one.
Yep. I think that it kind of just shows where we're at too. I mean, it's much of the same. There's really not going to be any sort of big ideas or innovative ideas that lead us out of this mess, because it is pretty much so far gone. And I think that we have bigger fish to fry. Also, you and I discussed it before we hopped on the call here. Oil prices are basically sub $60 right now. Russia
the ruble's getting crushed. So Russia's in a bad position. They just had another rate hike. They're trying to stabilize their currency somewhat, but that's going to be very difficult. We've got silver. Basically, purchases of silver are at basically all-time high as well. But the prices of silver are not indicative of basically the demand for silver.
Right.
This masterfully manipulated market that we have, Lewis. I mean, you and I talked. There's so many moving parts and there's so much manipulation going on. Nobody can really get a good grip on, what's going to happen, what's going to take place over the next, 3 to 6 months to a year. And
you certainly don't look at fundamentals, right?
Yeah, I mean, nobody cares about fundamentals anymore. It doesn't matter even for most companies. All you have to do is just raise as much capital, get as many subscribers as you possibly can. You don't even have to make a dime off them. And there is a way for you to make money by people just basically investing in your stock price, right?
Yep, that's it.
And that's been the case for some time now.
You don't have to know how to run a business. You have to know how to run Wall Street and road shows and give PowerPoint presentations.
Absolutely. And, I want to get your take because, you do follow the oil and silver and gold for the most part. But I want to get your take because I'm sure, as we had discussed before we came on this call, that you're really curious as to how this is all going to play out and the different dynamics of oil prices going this low. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a good outcome overall, and I want to get your thoughts on low oil prices and also, the two-part question. That's for the oil price. Second part is for the silver, basically the amount of purchases of silver that's been taking place at all-time highs.
Ryan, you've always said that the Fed is firmly in control and nothing is going to happen on Obama's dime, and I've agreed with that, and we have looked at, and the reason we say that is we've seen, since we started our show 5-6 years ago, we've been predicting that the Fed's going to lose control, and they haven't. They've managed to keep this game going with pretending they're going to stop QE and then actually stopping it, but then starting it up again, and using all the machinations that they do to keep interest rates low and to keep the economy exactly where they want it, through coordinating with the Japanese central bank, infecting the EU with the concept of doing QE of their own. So they've managed to keep everything in control. And the one caveat that we've both given to whether the Fed can stay in control is some type of, to use the overused cliche, a black swan event. Something that maybe China does, something that Russia does, something that's some external event that has nothing to do with monetary or fiscal policy that they can't control. We thought things like terrorist attack. We mentioned maybe Russia dumps its treasury bonds. China revalues the price of gold. Came up with all kinds of things that maybe would throw off this kind of pretend Goldilocks fake economy that we have. And what we've seen, I think, Ryan, is I think this is a black swan event with these low oil prices, because the low oil prices throw a monkey wrench into the Fed's plans. Mm-hmm. You and I have discussed the idea that the Fed is fighting deflation means they want higher prices, not lower prices. Well, guess what? Oil has gone down, 45, 50% in 6 months. You can't get any more deflationary than that. And you also can't say, well, that's because, there's slack in the economy. The economy didn't fall off 40, 50% in the last 2 or 3 months, such that demand for oil is down. Oil is subject to the same manipulation, but we've always known this, and it's out in the open, by OPEC. OPEC is a cartel. It's a monopoly, and they set prices. And they do what they want in their interest in order to get the best price that they can or the best outcome that they can. You say, well, why would they lower prices? That's not going to help them. Well, sure it is. Now, people are thinking, you and I, that maybe it's the United States calling the shots and telling them, lower oil prices because we're Russia. And maybe, Saudi Arabia does listen to the United States. We talked about the petrodollar and how the United States has that arrangement whereby the United States provides military support, which can either be defense of Saudi Arabia or to bomb other countries that Saudi Arabia wants the United States to bomb. And in return, Saudi Arabia prices its oil in U.S. dollars and accepts only dollars, and that provides a good underpinning for the dollar and creates demand for the dollar that might not otherwise exist. Okay, so you would think, sure, go to Russia and screw them by lowering oil prices, because Russia has been described, I think, by President Obama as a country, as a gas station masquerading as a country. So, so by taking their oil away, their pricing power, that kind of really harms Russia because they don't have a diversified economy.
Right.
But perhaps, Ryan, it also could be Saudi Arabia and the United States have not had a good relationship the last few years. They could not get the United States to bomb Syria last year. They finally got the United States this kind of, we have an ISIS threat, so I guess now we do have to bomb Syria.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what's happening, I think, is, and this is probably the key to all of it, is the United States has had this shale boom kind of renaissance, and it has created jobs, and it probably does three things. It makes the U.S. energy independent, creates jobs. But the real thing is, and then if the United States becomes energy independent, and they're saying that they can now export oil, well, then they no longer need Saudi Arabia to create demand for the dollar, because the export of the shale oil itself by the United States creates its own demand for the dollar. Well, wait a minute. Now you've basically taken Saudi Arabia out of the picture. You become energy independent. The jobs are a nice plus to have. And now Saudi Arabia, you don't need them to prop up the dollar. Well, guess what Saudi Arabia has? They have one card, oil. That's all they have.
Yep.
And they're going to allow the United States to become not only energy independent, to become a massive competitor against Saudi Arabia and export all this oil, so that basically Saudi Arabia is left shifting in the wind?
Right.
No, because what they need to do is they need to crush shale oil. Because shale oil is only a good investment, Ryan, if they can get $70, $80, $90, $100 a barrel.
Right.
Now, why was shale oil able to take off in the last 5-10 years? What do you think they used to get their operations up and running? Hundreds of billions of dollars of low interest rate loans.
Right.
All on the assumption that, hey, here's the business plan. We invest these hundreds of billions of dollars. We do exploration. We get everything going, get the technology. We start production, and we sell this stuff for $90, $100, $120 a barrel, and we're good to go. Sounds great. Until oil goes from 90 to 80 to 70 to 60, and OPEC says, and you know what, we're going to keep it there. 6 months, 7 months, who knows how long we're going to keep it there. Now, do you think these shale oil companies, when they have loans due, can sit there, and what are they going to do? Continue to produce shale and sell it for $50, $60 a barrel? Well, they probably have to. They're going to, just to stay in operations. Just like the silver mining companies. They have to produce silver and sell it just to keep their operations going at a loss below their cost of production. This is a massive deformation, a distortion in the market. Now you say, well, the silver companies, they love this. Oil is lower. Yeah, it's lower for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, but you can't business plan around these lower oil prices.
No.
Lower oil prices are grand for you and me and consumers. Sure, we could take an extra trip, cost us less to go to work each week, but it's not that big of a deal because oil has never been the major component of you pay far more in health insurance. You pay far more in rent than you do for your trips in the car. And some people in cities, where most of the people live, don't even drive around. They use public transport. Right. So it's nice, but they can't claim that somehow this is a wonderful thing for the economy. It's actually a horrible thing because it's not a market-driven price. And what's happened is we've become patting ourselves on the back that somehow we've solved our energy issue when maybe we haven't. And maybe what's going to happen here is because they have invested, and this may be an example of how low interest rates, artificially low interest rates, create malinvestment. They put all this money into shale oil, borrowed money, on the assumption that they're going to get $100 a barrel. And maybe in the model they say, well, maybe it'll go to 70 or 80. But, that's an outlier. Just like with long-term capital management, they built a bulletproof model, but they never anticipated how the model would work if prices went below their model. Well, prices are clearly below what any of these shale oil companies thought they were going to get. I mean, you're at $60, Ryan, and it's going lower, and there's no indication that it'll go higher. And I'm reading all these cheerleading articles saying, well, this is wonderful now. What will happen is the shale oil companies will simply cut back on production. There'll be a supply the drop in supply, and then the prices will go back up. No, they won't, because this isn't driven by supply and demand. Saudi Arabia and OPEC can increase production and continue to flood the market for a long period of time, enough so that the shale oil companies have to cry uncle. And then what happens, Ryan? Exactly what happened in 2008. Your subprime mortgage disaster, when all the loans came due on the homes and the derivatives that flowed from those, will happen with these shale oil busts, because there's billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of money on the line in these companies, and clearly they've been hedged. There's derivatives off of them. That'll all implode, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah, well, I
think it's a wonderful thing. Okay, well, deflation's not good, but we'll take lower gas prices. This is good.
Right. I mean, it's 100% against what the Fed wants. You know what I mean? And they'll come out and spin this some way where it's good for the consumer, right? And everybody, when they make that comment, will pay no attention to it. The whole time you were speaking, the only thing I could think of is like, man, looks like we could have another bailout take place, right? Because inevitably.
Hey, remember they said they wouldn't bail out the banks. Maybe they'll bail out the shale oil companies.
Well, I mean, just think about it, Louis. I mean, they've spent so much time, effort, energy, and money into this being innovative, right, and being energy independent, as you said. Will the government let this masterful, years and years and years of doing this just fail? I can't see that they'd want to do that. So there's only one way to keep the party going, and that's, of course, to keep interest rates low. And then if they start to go belly up, it's to fund them as well. And, you brought up a great point. I mean, OPEC, and really this could be a direct hit, because by lowering prices, they're hurting Russia and the United States at the same time.
Right.
Right?
Because they don't dislike Russia. They only dislike Russia because the United States is against them. They actually like Russia because Russia supports. No, actually they don't, because Russia supports Iran and Syria. So they're against Russia too.
Yeah,
but they're against the United States because the United States won't be forceful enough against those countries.
Right. But it's, when you look at for face value, which typically most people do, and including the media, they're going to look, we got oil prices at sub $60. Like, that's got to be good for the economy, right? And then
because consumers are going to spend money. That's what they look at it as.
And then all of a sudden they come and they look, hey, see, look, we've got retail sales, November, 0.7% versus estimated 0.4%.
A direct beneficiary of the low prices of oil.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the narrative has been. In reading a couple articles, it's exactly the way they've spun that.
There was one on restaurants. This is good for restaurants because now with the extra money that people have, they go to restaurants.
Of course.
And they no longer need bargains now, right?
Oh, yeah. But
that explains away Black Friday disaster, 11% down, because low oil prices, things are great for the consumer. They don't need to line up and get bargains.
No, they can sit back and wait till the new year before they want to take advantage of the next deal. They don't need to do it today.
But it goes against the deflation argument that if prices are lower, people will delay their consumption. Nonsense. No one's not filling up their car because they're hoping the gas price will be lower next week.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not a good situation.
Let me ask you a question, Ryan, because and I haven't thought this through. What does it mean for real estate interest rates, and what, if anything, can the Federal Reserve do to kind of remedy this issue? I mean, they can't lower rates. That's not going to help. That'll only make the dollar stronger, which will mean that oil will go lower versus the dollar. And you know what else is interesting before you answer that question is the oil is down, the dollar is up, which makes sense, but gold has gone up with it, which kind of makes it seem like, gold is up against all currencies. It seems like all currencies are down and gold and the dollar are up. So who knows?
Right.
But what do you think is going to happen? What is the Fed going to do, and how does it impact interest rates, mortgages? Because mortgage applications are down as well. So how does it impact the Fed's interest rates and real estate?
Well, I've been watching and paying attention to, the interest rate situation, and it seems as though, we've got historic lows again. We've had some what many people consider positive economic reports come out that have driven them up slightly, but they're still extremely, extremely low, and really it's not driving mortgage applications. It's not driving people out to go buy houses, mainly because of what we talk about each and every week is that there's a lack of actual jobs. There's a lack of full-time jobs and jobs that would actually allow you to get a loan, not the part-time job, not the multiple person that works 3 or 4 part-time jobs. That's not, the person that is it's helping. And I've noticed, so it's funny you say that because I don't know if you saw, but Fannie and Freddie Mac just came out the other day, and they're going back to a 3% down mortgage program, right? So what happens is that when you can't drive sales or refinances, just financing in general for homes with low interest rates, you have to then get creative, which is what I always talked about, Louis. I told you that they have to start doing these alternative financing options, which are low down payments, which could be stated income, which could be whatever it is. So I feel like the market is finally starting to pay attention that, oh, crap, we have to do something. We have to do something that's going to stimulate the market, even though they're claiming that the market's okay. If the market was okay, there would be no need for a 3% down program. Now,
right.
They're also doing that because they want to have a competing product with the government loan, the FHA loan, which is a 3.5% down product. Now, they'll make it so they have a 3% down product, so the people that qualify are going to probably run towards that product. But it's a clear statement that things are not good. They're not good at all. And I honestly think that interest rates, Lewis, are probably going to trade in the range that they've been in with where they're at now, probably 1/4 to 3/8% for the next year. I don't really see them going anywhere. I think that the Fed will have to come in and continue to buy mortgage-backed securities if they rise at all. They will have to, because if not, then it could be catastrophic. Because I don't really see it being a very strong spring market next year at all.
Right.
And the way that they can kind of make it somewhat strong or appear strong is you start coming out with these programs beforehand. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the Fannie product kicks in this December. So most of the time when they implement these programs, Louis, they don't do them like right away. You know what I mean? They don't.
Oh, it's
panic. It's panic. So the first one, I believe, Fannie's product kicks in like December, and then I believe Freddie's product will kick in I want to say February or March of next year. But that's a clear sign that they're scrambling. They're trying to find something that's going to give the market any sort of boost. But it's not going to be driven by interest rates. It's going to be driven by creative financing, in my opinion. Now, I think that, with the whole oil situation, and I think that could throw a monkey wrench into things, and I think that the Fed could be really scrambling here in the next couple months trying to figure out what to do. But I feel like it's so manipulated now, and we can't really make much sense of it. They could be bailing out every industry that you could possibly imagine, right?
Well, perhaps it's a case of manipulation meets manipulation and screws up the other guy's game, because
it could.
The Fed is manipulating, Saudi Arabia and OPEC are manipulating. If they're not manipulating in sync and coordinating it, someone's game is going to get messed up. And Saudi Arabia's game is a lot easier to play. They have one card.
Right.
They don't coordinate. All they have is we'll just increase production of oil or decrease production of oil, flood the market or withhold oil from the market. And in a way, the Fed has something similar, but it's a little more complicated. They can raise interest rates or lower interest rates. The difference is they can't lower them anymore, or they can print money or not print money or currency. But there's limits to that, and their game is a lot larger and a lot more complicated, and they have to coordinate it with the central banks. So I would say Saudi Arabia's game, OPEC's game, is easier to play. And they've been playing it for, what, since the early 70s, since they created OPEC. I mean, they've managed to put the world into turmoil twice in the 70s with oil shocks. And I don't think, the Fed's in control, but they're trying to control global finance, which is different than just the price of oil.
Yep.
And, maybe they won't be able to pull it off. And we've always said that. At some point, Ron Paul said at some point the Fed loses control, Jim Grant, all these guys, and the Fed hasn't lost control.
Right.
and you saw Bernanke, if there's ever inflation, he said like 5 years ago, how confident are you that you can stop it? He says 100%. I mean, these guys are good.
Yeah.
But still, I don't think they're that good. If something like this comes along, there's not much they can do about it.
Yeah, and it's probably something that they weren't prepared for either, right?
Or even if the United States asked for it, they were like, okay, lower the prices, but not that low, or for not that long. Maybe was the conversation, or maybe the conversation didn't happen. They don't have that dialogue. When Kissinger and Nixon met with the Saudis, and you see, they were very tight with them, and you see Bush walking around holding hands with that Saudi prince. I'm sure everyone's seen that picture, even kissing the guy. You don't see Obama doing that.
No.
Not that he should. It's just you can't expect the same type of compliance out of Saudi Arabia that prior administrations had.
Yeah, well, it is interesting, and I think that this is something that we will have to pay attention to, Louis, is to see if we can find, the reasoning behind maybe why this is taking place. Obviously, you and I are speculating as to what could be the reason here, but it is definitely worth paying attention to. Another interesting thing, too, when you had asked me about interest rates, what's funny about interest rates, and the Mortgage Bankers Association and National Association of Realtors, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all are projecting interest rates to increase substantially over the next 12 months. Okay? Now, do you really think that they can afford to have interest rates rise when they're already not getting any production?
No hesitation, no.
Yeah, absolutely. But the reason why they would say something like this is because they want to put the fear factor back in people.
That's
right?
a good reason, yep.
Because guess what? These people are looking for deals, Louis. Remember, they're in good financial position. So they want these people that are sitting on the sidelines that don't have to take the Black Friday deal to come out next spring and buy up as many houses as possible.
They're complacent. Interest rates will remain low forever, no rush. And now they're trying to say, look, rates are going higher. That is the narrative, Ryan. The Fed keeps saying that rates are going to go higher, and that fits into the whole, the United States is doing really well. We've got great GDP numbers, great employment numbers, which we all know are not good, and therefore we can and will raise rates.
Yeah.
And we know if they raise rates, it's going to be a disaster, but they can't say that. They're going to have to come up with the reason why. Well, a lot of reasons now they can say they're not going to raise rates. Tomorrow's PPI number comes in, and it shows negative. Well, we're not near our inflation target of 2%. Oh, okay, well, that's a reason not to raise interest rates. Oil prices are unexpectedly low, causing deflation. Well, there's another reason you can't raise interest rates. The economy slows down because of the Republicans, supposedly. There's all these reasons, Ryan. Well, they are not going to pull the trigger on higher rates. If they do, it'll be for the same reason that you and I talked about. It's just to gain credibility. They do it once, and then they see the reaction, and then they don't continue.
Right, but housing's in such a slump that would have this crazy lag effect on the market that I can't really see them doing that.
You're right, Ryan. Look, the prices are the mortgage applications are down, even though supposedly the economy is better. Year over year, the mortgage applications and sales are down, even though the economy is supposedly better, more jobs supposedly, higher GDP, and lower interest rates.
Yeah.
And somebody tells you that's an economy, and you see AP and Reuters, there's a new word, a solid recovery, solid retail sale, everything is solid. It's like they send out a memo and they tell Bloomberg, AP, and Reuters to use the word solid, because everything is solid. It gives that a very good word, give everybody the impression that things are well-grounded and the economy is on the mend.
they all do it at the same time, so it like increases like there's some
Yes.
sort of credibility behind it, right?
When you're on Twitter, you just see the word, you see them fly by. Solid job numbers, solid, solid retail sales. Now there's this new thing, Ryan, and I heard Peter Schiff talking about it the other day. He alerted us to an article in the New Yorker called "The Economic Truthers," and basically this woman is saying that, and trying to draw the connection between 9/11 truthers and birthers and so on. These are concepts that are not mainstream. There's a small minority of people who believe 9/11 was an inside job and Obama was born in Kenya and wherever he was born. But that people who believe that the economic recovery is fake, they're in the same category of lunatic, nut job, tinfoil hat wearing people who just don't understand that the economy is great and that Obamacare is wonderful.
Right.
It's not rising. This woman is saying it's made healthcare less expensive, and anyone who looks at their premiums, who actually pays premiums, knows that's not true. And anybody who says that the employment numbers aren't real, well, then they're just truthers too. Yeah, they're real. There's a lot of part-time jobs. All we're saying, and most of the people in the country are saying, is the economy is not impacting us in a positive way. Therefore, it's not a recovery because the jobs being created are part-time, low-paying, and we're losing full-time jobs, and wages aren't rising. And now this is their new narrative. They have to tag people who actually see the truth and call them truthers and give them a name as if there's some kind of off-kilter and don't quite understand how wonderful things are. And that's basically Orwellian.
Right. Yeah, and, what's interesting is that when they claim that these people don't know, they're like these conspiracy theorists and they're crazy lunatics, but then I read, Freddie Mac's 2014 Economic and Housing Market Outlook, and this is what they say, Louis. Now, you tell me who's crazy. While higher interest rates generally detract from housing activity, when they occur with strong job and income growth, the net result can be increases in household formations, construction, and home sales. Our view for 2015 is exactly that, namely, income and job growth offset the negative effect of higher interest rates and translate into gains for the nation's housing market. Yeah, who's crazy here?
Yeah, well, where are those gains? You see, that's a true statement. If you had, and you've said this many times on the show, if you have a roaring job market, a roaring economy, sure, rates will go higher, and you can absorb those rates. That's a true statement. But we don't have those. We don't even have the prospect of those. But they keep insisting that it's just around the corner, or worse, it's already happening.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They're claiming that we already have job growth, right? So
right.
They're insinuating
unless you're a truther, economic truther, and you don't believe it.
Right. Yeah, they already have job growth, and that's why 2015 interest rates have to rise. That's why you have to get your tail out there in February and March to take advantage of those low interest rates because they're not going to be there at the end of the year. That's what it is. Does anybody truly believe that the real unemployment rate, I'm saying the one, where you start stripping out all the crap, is 5.8%? Does anyone really believe that?
If you want to calculate it and you just don't count certain people,
yeah,
Brian, it's the same thing with initial jobless claims. They're lower because the size of the labor force is lower. There's fewer people left to fire. They've been fired over the last X number of years, and also because people, instead of firing people, they just move them to part-time and they absorb the savings because they don't have to pay the health care.
And, you and I have talked about, how you can basically manipulate these economic reports however you see fit, right? Half the time they're surveying who they want so they get the result that they want, right?
Right.
So I'm not ever going to be that guy that puts too much stock in any of these reports, although we do have to report on them because that's what's put out there in the media, and we have to kind of give our 2 cents on what these things mean. But I am a firm believer of the eye test, as I always mention, Louis, and we can kind of see what's going on out there. And, yeah, okay, eye test says, look, gas prices, it's great that they're low, but that's not what the Fed wants. So if you really read further into it, when we have something like that
taking place, we have to ask better questions. What does this really mean? This isn't what the Fed wants. Now, they'll come out in their next thing and say, oh, you know what? It's good for consumers that the prices are lower, but that's not what you want. Nobody's going to ask them the question, well, that's not what you wanted.
Right. You wanted what? You wanted inflation. Aren't lower gas prices not only deflationary in terms of what you pay on a price perspective, but it has a deflationary impact across the entire economy because the economy runs on petroleum-based products and energy, which means if those costs are lower, then the cost of production is lower, which means they can pass along lower costs to consumers, which will mean, in their view, consumers just won't buy anything as they wait for lower prices, as they wait for the lower oil prices to ripple through the economy and result in lower consumer prices.
Yeah, because there's lower energy prices. People can afford to lower their product prices too, right?
Right.
Because
to gain market share. Because that's basically what Saudi Arabia is doing. They're trying to regain or protect their market share by lower prices so that it's not competitive for the shale oil companies to be in business at $70, $80 a barrel.
And then everybody starts to take the Amazon approach, Lewis, where basically you will go negative to acquire a customer, right?
And the stock, and the narrative will be, look, these companies are gaining customers and revenue, so the stock market goes higher, even though they lose even more money on every additional customer they acquire or sell to.
Yep. Yeah. Is it any coincidence? And see, most people don't understand this about a company like Amazon. Like, they will, to acquire a customer, basically, they'll spend an absurd amount of money. They don't care if they go negative a couple $100 because everything is like long term for them. But all they're really worried about is if they can continue to get funding for the rest of for basically forever. Is if they can continue to innovate and make Wall Street happy.
Yep,
right?
And they do. They do a wonderful job. Drones, Amazon Prime, competing with Netflix, storing your stuff in the cloud. Wonderful products. I mean, you don't even have to price. I remember when online shopping came out, you had these price bots where you compare stuff.
Yeah.
You almost don't even need to bother. You just go to Amazon. And
That's
you're going to get free shipping.
To go.
Yeah, and you're going to get free, and they have everything, and you're going to get free shipping. And if you don't like the product, you just send it back, and they make that easy too.
Well, if anybody's wondering why, basically these stores like Sears and Walmart and Target are all not doing very well, you don't have to look much further than Amazon.
They're being rewarded to lose money, and therefore they do more of it. And we're the beneficiaries of it, but at some point, when Wall Street doesn't reward companies to lose money and actually penalizes them for losing money, that's all going to change.
Yeah, I don't want you to be productive in the form of just acquiring customers, okay? That's not good anymore. I want you to actually have to make some money on that customer.
Right. How can you compete? Now, you say in a normal market environment, take Wall Street out of it. If a company is stupid enough to lose money on each sale through a predatory pricing scheme, you would say, some people would say, well, that's illegal, you can't allow them to do that. I'd say, no, let them do that because it's good for the consumer, at least short term. There's no way the company can continue to sell stuff at a loss to go out of business. Unless they're Amazon and Wall Street rewards them for doing that. Because if you're in a regular business and you and I decide we're going to crush the competition, we have a restaurant, we're going to sell everything at half price, we're not going to be in business very long. And the other restaurateurs can complain that we're doing this, but we don't have infinite deep pockets.
Yep.
But if you're Wall Street funded, sure you do. And so there's a real deformation in the market. There's a distortion that Amazon is actually, in fact, we would have massive inflation, price inflation, if people had to sell their products, companies had to sell their products at closer towards a profit margin.
Oh, 100%. I mean, but it just goes into, what we talk about all the time. I mean, this is like unprecedented times here. We're talking about everything is manipulated. I mean, everything. Like, so it's like, oh, well, Amazon is so cheap. You can get things at like literally 25% of where you're going to get them in any of the stores that you would, the physical brick and mortar stores. Well, yeah, but that's not because they're this great company and that they're making these products so much cheaper than everybody else.
right?
Oh, they're using their IPO money and their Wall Street money to fund their innovation, but not their profits. Look at Costco. I realize this, and this is good for our listeners to know. Costco makes all of their money on the membership fee. I didn't know that. That's 100% of what they make money, and they make no money on the all the goods that they sell. So it's not like when they sell more, they make more. They make more, and they get more membership fees, which cost them nothing. They charge you the $50, $80 a year for that.
Right.
And then what they do is they act as a co-op, and they buy everything at wholesale, and then I think they sell it for they're not allowed to sell it for more than I think 5% over what they paid for it. Well, they're not going to make any money off of that.
No.
But that means they don't necessarily have the lowest prices. Because when you go to a supermarket, sometimes they have sales where they actually have lost leaders. Well, they'll sell the stuff cheaper than Costco has it. And I finally realized after shopping there a few times, you go, a couple of cases of beans or peas or whatever, and you bring them home and you realize, no, they're more money than the sale at the local Grand Union.
Yep.
And, so Costco is not really the same type of threat. That's just pooling people's money together to get a good wholesale price. But when you have Amazon pooling Wall Street's money to get below prices, then you have a real serious issue, because even a company like Costco, who's buying at wholesale and selling to you only a fraction over wholesale, still it has competition from Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and these are all things. A company like Costco, I mean, everybody knows that they're extremely successful. Everybody knows that Amazon has been very successful as well, but the reason why is because they've had unlimited access to capital. I mean, and we talk about
but Costco makes money.
Oh yeah, Costco is making money. Amazon's not.
Right.
And I find it's just so puzzling, because when we always talk about the economy and it growing, well, okay, so that would mean that the small business owner, or the mid-sized company would be able to thrive in a market like this, but that's not the case, because guess what? They still don't have access to capital. They still don't. They can't. They couldn't even employ one of these tactics if they wanted to.
No, and they couldn't employ it for long, because even if they got capital, they would never have the same type of capital, same large amount.
Yeah, because you have to sustain this for years and years and years in order for it to have an effect. You know what I mean? I mean, Amazon is not just, they didn't just open yesterday. If somebody tried to employ a tactic like this for 6 months and then raise their prices back, everybody would leave again.
But that's the reason why predatory pricing is not really an issue, absent something like having Wall Street funding, an endless supply of funding. You'd actually welcome if a company wanted to be stupid enough to come out and sell you. In fact, as a consumer, I'm happy Amazon exists.
Me too. I love the service.
You can't go wrong. The stuff comes. You can order like an $8 product if you're on the Prime, and they've given me a free Prime because I had a return that they handled, and they thought they didn't handle it correctly. I didn't even say you handled it correctly. They're like, hey, how about we just give you a free Prime membership? I'm like, okay. How about I order an $8 pen and you send it to me for free? I mean, you can't stay in business doing that.
That's good. Well, I mean, we have this. We talk about it all the time, Louis. It's like there's. I don't see really one good thing that you could hang your hat on in this economy at all. There's not one good thing.
Other than the propaganda is genius in telling us that it's a wonderful economy.
Right. Now, from the consumer standpoint, like if you're looking at the economy and you're looking at mortgage interest rates and you're looking at low gas prices, yes, those are good things for potentially the consumer in the short term. Like today,
yeah, but those aren't things that they engineered for us. Those are things that were thrown at us that they didn't want to happen.
Well, yeah, they were a byproduct of them trying to help their buddies out, right?
No, what I'm saying is the low oil prices are nothing because of U.S. monetary and fiscal policy genius or trying to help us.
No, they didn't even probably want that to happen.
No. So
because everything that they've said has been that they want prices to increase, not decrease, and now they have oil going to sub $60. I mean, I haven't looked at what gas prices are out in Northern Virginia here, but I imagine they're probably like below $2.50 a gallon right now. For regular.
Yeah, I think yesterday I went. It was $2.60, $2.59 a gallon for regular unleaded. Diesel is below $2.50.
Yep. These, you and I typically do get kicks out of headlines, but from a homeowner's perspective now, obviously we've got Fannie and Freddie pushing that interest rates are going to rise in 2015, which you and I go on record and say not going to happen. But these headlines just start to crack me up as we get into the holiday market, because they're kind of prepping for next spring, right? Because everybody knows not much happens between November and January. So one of the headlines is millions of potential new households waiting out the recovery.
Oh, yes. There's also the millennials that have been dying to emerge from their parents' basements and go buy homes in the millions of hordes,
Yeah, that's in 2015. The millennials will be the biggest home buying group.
Of course they will. Was that Zillow propaganda?
Yeah. And then there's another one, experts, first-time home buyers. Experts. First-time home buyers, weak finances holding back the housing market. So now the first-time home buyers are holding back the market. No, what's holding back the market, as we talk about time and time again, is jobs in general. It's not the first-time home buyer's job, and it's sure as heck not the millennials. It's just in general. The economy is pretty much non-existent. It's this masterfully manipulated thing on Wall Street that these big companies that they want to continue to push money into them. They'll continue to be around, and as we've seen, Lewis, there's a lot of companies that are going out of business right now.
Well, wait till the shale oil companies start to go out of business. I mean, they've moved the money towards the older and the richer, and then they wonder why the younger people aren't buying houses like they want them to. Well, if you hadn't bailed out everybody and bailed out the existing homeowners, then maybe those homes would have been sold at a loss, and the younger people could have bought them at an affordable price, but instead they chose not to do that. They bailed out the entire real estate industry, and they try to boost prices back up, and they keep saying home prices are on the rise, and that's a good thing. They always want home prices to rise. Well, if you're a home buyer, you don't want home prices to rise. If you're 23 years old with your first job, you don't want home prices rising. And then every day they tell you it's a good thing. Housing recovery. Prices set to rise 10% this year. Housing recovery. Solid job numbers. Those are like smacks in the face to millennials when they're being told all this economic data that comes out is good for the economy when it's actually the worst thing for the millennial.
Mm-hmm.
They got a job part-time without insurance, and home prices went up, and that's good. That's solid. That's a recovery if you're 23 years old. You got a job without insurance, and home prices are rising, and it's part-time job.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago. James Altucher has a podcast, and he was interviewing the CEO of, and I can never remember their name. It's a staffing company, right? And essentially, in the last, I believe it's about 2.5 years, they've went from $300 million in revenue to over $1 billion. Okay? Now, one of the questions that Altucher asked on his podcast is is this basically a direct result of Obamacare and everything else? And he says, yes. And also, it's a byproduct of people just don't want to, they just want to basically hire people on a temporary basis and be able to get rid of them at will and let the staffing agency deal with firing people.
Right.
They don't want to have anything to do with it. And see, this is the new age of
They've
where
structurally
we're at.
changed the economy, the employment market, but they're
Absolutely.
still measuring it as if it's measured the old way.
Right. So, I mean, and we're not just talking low-level positions, Lewis. I mean, we're talking that they're outsourcing basically these staffing companies like senior vice presidents and top-level executives, and now they're just on a contract basis, right? And they can get rid of them, man, whenever they want, pretty much. So, I mean, this is the new age of employment, and nobody wants
right,
to
but
talk
they're
about
measuring
it.
as if these are the same type of jobs, and they're not.
No.
And you never hear that. They just parrot the top line number and use the word solid and recovery and job market strength in their stories.
Well, of course,
and there's no wonder that people with half a brain, the economic truthers, 70% of the country, say there isn't a recovery. That's the only reason Republicans got elected. Hey, look at the numbers for Republicans and Democrats. Their numbers are in single-digit. Congress has a single-digit approval rating. Okay, so it wasn't like they voted Republicans in because people all of a sudden realized, oh, Republicans have a better philosophy. They don't. They realized the economy was no good, and that's what they do. They vote out the incumbent party. That's all that is. So the reason the Republicans won is that most of the people thought the economy was bad. They're not truthers. They know what a part-time job is. They know the difference between a part-time job and a full-time job. They know the difference between benefits and no benefits. They know the difference between higher insurance premiums and lower insurance premiums. That's stupid. I mean, Gruber thinks that the people are stupid. Yeah. But the people don't think they're stupid. Nope. The expression, even a dog knows the difference between being stepped on and kicked. These numbers are a kick in the face to people when they try to tell you that they're good, solid numbers reflecting a recovery, economic recovery.
Yeah, and people vote with their pocketbooks, Lewis.
Clearly.
They're clearly smart enough.
They don't vote based on what the press tells them.
No, they could care less. They just want to know how does that affect to the change in dollars that they have in their pocket. And if they're looking at it from the perspective of, you know what, I'm somebody that is a small business or I'm whatever, they're going to look at it and say, well, I don't want that party in there, so I'm voting for the other one. And if you're somebody that's receiving entitlement and you don't want them to go away, how are you going to vote?
You're going to vote for the party that promised you, but now they both promise it.
Right. And it's unbelievable to me. I mean, and people aren't stupid. They know how it's hurting their pockets. They know. Now, they could be confused by a lot of these headlines because, I mean, they are quite misleading, and most people don't bother to click on the headline to actually read the story. That the story has actually nothing to do with the headline.
Oh, you can even read the story. They may bury some of this, but most of the time, they don't talk about they don't go deep into the Bureau of Labor Statistics report and talk about that the jobs are going to 55 years and older people, that the jobs are full-time, that there's been they're part-time, that the full-time job number is down 150,000 each month. They don't talk about that. You can even read the whole article. And you still won't get the truth, what's going on. And this is the truth according to the government's own numbers. You don't even have to be a truther and say the government cooks the numbers. If you just read what they gave you, those numbers aren't even that good anyway. It's what they actually choose to report out of the numbers, cooked or uncooked.
Yeah, what you and I would pull from those numbers and what's actually pulled from them by the media are like opposite ends of the spectrum most of the time. I mean, we're like, really? Like, how could you even look at that as something that's positive? And right. We talk about all this, and I always bring it back to, there are people, if they're out there that can take advantage of a low interest rate environment, then that's fantastic. You should do so. So there are people that can still capitalize, but it's not on the scale that they're making it seem. There's not hundreds of thousands and millions of people that are just like, they got their checkbook ready to write a contract and sign it tomorrow. They're not even ready come next spring. Okay? They're not.
Well, it's not going to be any better next spring.
No. But you know what? That's my whole point, is they have to get creative in order to make it seem like things are better. So they could potentially now create a 3% down product, and they might get a temporary boost with that product all of a sudden. But
that's like having a baseball team. You don't practice for weeks, and the coach is worried that the team isn't going to do well, so they just bring the fences in 40 feet. That doesn't solve the problem. The team still sucks.
They don't care about solving problems, Louis.
No, they just want to sell homes and say they've had a good headline number, that now you see home sales have improved, and our prediction was right that millennials were ready to – the first-time home buyer was pent-up demand. No, it was only because they pushed them out of the door and made them an offer too good to be true.
100%, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not they can continue to pull these programs though. Like, if this was one, and then if this doesn't get the boost that they'll want 6 months from then, they'll say, you know what, you don't have to be employed for 2 years anymore, just 6 months.
You know what, 3% is too high for certain people. No down, no money down.
Yep, no money down.
And then if that doesn't work, how about the government gives you the down payment?
It's coming, Lewis. It's coming. I mean,
They will have their housing recovery one way or another.
No, we'll go right back to where we came from in the last boom and bust cycle, right?
Yeah, but I think the shale thing is going to bust it before they even manage to get a housing bubble going.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. We're actually up at the top of the hour here, Louis. But if you wouldn't mind, give our listeners your website so they can check out your daily blog posts and any information that you have for them.
Thanks, Ryan. Smallgold.com, SMAULGLD. Please visit smallgold.com and check out the analysis of the Fed, gold, silver, real estate. Smallgold.com. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Louis. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to download, subscribe, share the show on iTunes at Real Estate 360. You can also stream it live on the website at realestate360live.com. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.